Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on yet another floor crossing to the federal Liberals. But first, the U.S. president pulls back on his threats to destroy the Iranian civilization.
Trump is worried about the markets. He's worried about the price of oil rising. He's worried about equity markets falling. And what he thought he would get out of this was 2 weeks where the markets would be happy.
Donald Trump has declared he will suspend the bombing of Iran for a period of 2 weeks, subject to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz. And as the two sides continue negotiations, the rest of the world left weighing the uncertainty that continues to linger. And joining us now to discuss the impact of that uncertainty, Gary Marr, President and CEO of the Canada West Foundation, former MLA and Cabinet Minister, and of course a former representative for our province in Washington and in Asia. Mr. Marr, there you go. How are you, sir? Welcome back.
I'm doing grand. Thank you very much for having me on today.
Okay, well, maybe as a quick starting point, should we be breathing a sigh of relief this evening? How are you looking on these latest developments?
Well, I would hate to work at the Canadian Embassy at this time because it's difficult to hit a briefing note that is out of date by the time you hit send. Things have changed so much. Even in the last 12 hours, the strait is open, the strait is closed, there's a ceasefire, there's not a ceasefire. It's very, very difficult to follow events in real time. And so this kind of uncertainty is precisely the reason why Alberta, Western Canada needs to step up and be able to access markets in other parts of the world that are relying on things that are coming out of the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, from the business community to everyday Albertans, many are reflecting that we're in a perpetual state of uncertainty, even some weighing hour to hour whether or not we should go and fuel up the vehicle. What's to be said about the longevity of this situation?
So, our former Lieutenant Governor, Lois Hole, would say the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today. And I would say the same thing about our trade infrastructure and our pipelines. The best time to have done this was 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. And that's not because you can take advantage of things right now, because, of course, it'll take years for us to be able to get pipelines and infrastructures and trade agreements in place. But it's because there will always be a certain amount of turmoil that goes on in the Middle East. And so our ability to displace the turmoil that's associated with there and getting oil, gas, fertilizer, food out of the Strait of Hormuz, Canada can provide all of that to the world, and being a democratic, law-abiding nation, we're the best option for many places in the world, and that will continue 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road. And so it's a very good idea that we take advantage of the opportunity that the world markets demand.
Okay, so we've seen the price of oil shoot up through this conflict. Even Western Canadian Select edged up above $100 a barrel on Tuesday. Today, of course, price is coming down a bit. How do you feel those fluctuations should be viewed where impact on Alberta's energy sector is concerned? Is this a good thing?
Well, I would say this, in terms of building a pipeline, for example, you cannot decide on doing it based on the events of the last 3 months. You have to really think about it in decades out. Nobody puts a $10 billion bet on something unless there's going to be some indicia that you're going to be needing both policy durability and market durability for years and years to come, not based on 3 months of high costs of oil or gas or fertilizer. So I think in the long term, we look at the 10 largest consumers of energy in the world, biggest economies in the world. They all continue to demand what it is that Western Canada can produce. And so I think we can't ignore the short-term fluctuations of price, but we really have to be looking long-term. And I think the long-term prospects for demand for our product remains pretty strong.
You mentioned fertilizer a moment ago. How heavily do dynamics weigh here on Alberta's agriculture industry? Certainly, this is the time of year when input costs are heading up with spring seeding on the horizon.
Well, when you look at the things that come out of, you've got nitrogen-based fertilizers that come out of the Strait of Hormuz. You've got urea, the prices of ammonia, they're all going up. And that will be reflected in the input costs of farmers in the province of Alberta and in Western Canada. So I think it'll be, we should probably expect with higher input costs in those goods, in those commodities, we should probably expect that the price of groceries are going to go up in Western Canada. That will affect us very, very directly. So it's more than just the price of gasoline at the pump.
This is from farmers to all of us as consumers. To what degree do you see this being on governments, be they federal or provincial, to help cushion the blow of this impact of all that we're discussing here?
Well, it's going to be tough. I mean, governments only have so many tools to be able to deal with things, and they don't have the ability to change the price of oil. They don't have the ability to change the price of commodities. So I think there have been many who have suggested, for example, on the price of fuel, that the federal government, sort of take a tax holiday. I mean, the percentage of taxes that make up the price of a liter of gasoline is pretty high. So you could do that. The federal government has put in place some types of programs to help make groceries more affordable, but in the long term, those are not sustainable solutions. And so we need to increase our productivity of our economy. We need to be able to ensure that our supply chains are strong, and that is a medium and long-term solution, not a short-term solution. There are very few short-term solutions that are available to governments, provincial or federal.
All right. Well, we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate your time as always, Mr. Marr. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you, Michael.
Gary Marr, President and CEO of the Canada West Foundation. From floor crossing number 5 to demands for the Justice Minister to be fired and evolving developments in the Middle East conflict. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, Calgary-based public opinion consultant Janet Brown, and Laura Knop is a former journalist and broadcast news educator. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with the Liberals, now one seat shy of a majority after a longtime Conservative MP crossed the floor today.
We need a serious leader who can address the uncertainty that has arrived due to the unjustified American tariffs. We need a global leader with a plan to make a more resilient Canada, a stronger Canada, a more self-reliant Canada for this critical moment. And that man is our Prime Minister.
Ontario MP Marilyn Gladu is the 5th to join the Liberals in as many months and the 4th to leave the Conservatives. The Prime Minister told reporters today that Gladu brings a wealth of political, engineering and business experience. Janet, surprised to see an MP considered a hardcore Conservative who even briefly ran for leadership of that party to be heading across the aisle. What's your read on the move?
Well, the rumors have been swirling all through the weekend and early this week that there were as many as 10 Conservatives considering crossing. But of all the rumors I heard, I never heard a name like Marilyn Gladu because she is quite hardcore. I remember her once standing up and reading a poem against the legalization of cannabis. She's got very conservative values. But when you think about it, she's 64 years old. She's been an MP since 2015. She represents a riding, Sarnia-Lambton, which is on the Canada-U.S. border. And I can sort of see her logic. I can see her saying, this may be the last time I run. We're probably a couple of years away from an election. I could have 2 years of sitting on the government side. And for a long time MP, it's much different to be sitting on the government side than it is in opposition. So I can see all of these factors coming together and her saying, I want to represent my constituents sitting in government.
Laura, what does it say about the dynamics of the Liberals for Mark Carney to bring an MP into the fold considered by some a far-right member of the Conservative caucus?
I think he just wants to get as many bums on the Liberal side of the House as he possibly can. It's almost like pulling in a majority by stealth. It's getting kind of depressingly familiar that we're getting all these floor crossings that will eventually, from the look of it, I mean, it doesn't take much more. We've got by-elections coming up for them to actually have the majority that the government or the Liberals did not win in the first place. What I found quite interesting when I was doing some research this morning is that Heather Wright from The Independent, which is an Ontario outlet, had reported that Gladue in this January said that there should be a by-election every time somebody wants to cross, rather than allowing a floor crosser. So this is quite the reverse.
Yeah, quite the change in tune. Okay, so Janet, 4 of the 5 floor crossers have been from the Conservatives. How do you weigh the impact on Pierre Poilievre's leadership, especially at a time when the party's embarking on a shift in tone, new ad campaign?
Well, and he also recently lost his director of communications, Katie Merrifield, and I don't know the reason behind that, but it has got to be troubling for Poilievre and his team because it's not just Gladue. We're hearing rumors about many others, and we're just on the verge of the Liberals turning this into a majority. There's going to be by-elections on Monday, and it looks almost certain that the Liberals will win a minimum of those 2 seats, putting them in clear majority territory. And so there may be some other Conservatives who say, look, I didn't want to be the person that determined whether this was a minority or majority government, but now that it's a majority government, I just might make the flip right now. So Pierre Poilievre has got to be nervous. His people have got to be nervous. And I'm sure they're working the phones right now to shore up discontent as much as they can.
Laura, does there come a point where all of these floor crossings come back to haunt the Carney government?
It could very well be. This is personal and political opportunism at its most blatant. I just find it quite distasteful to run for one party, to be a supporter of one party, and then say, hey, actually, I wanted to be in government, so I'm going to go to the other party. It makes me wonder, did you only run for the Conservatives last time? Because for quite a while, it looked like they were going to form the government. If this was my MP, I would really be questioning their ethics, and I think it could lead to a big trust issue. Are you there because you truly believe in Liberal policy or because you think it's better for you?
All right, let's shift to provincial politics now. And Alberta's opposition leader calling on the Premier to fire the Justice Minister, accusing Mickey Amory of conflicts of interest because of ties to Sam Raish.
Even if there's nothing here, this looks bad, the conflict of interest is apparent, and the government needs to be able to say, look, nothing shady is going on here, so let's reopen the investigations, let's fire Mickey Amory, and let's have a public inquiry. And
she is accusing Amory of political interference after the Globe and Mail reported the Justice Minister shortened the amount of time Elections Alberta has to penalize political donation violations, which happened while Sam Raish, the CEO of MH Care Medical, was under investigation for a political donations complaint. The NDP leader says Amory and Raish's close relationship through marriage and friendship is a conflict, and he wants the investigation reopened. Laura, how much of a leg do you feel the opposition has here in demanding the Justice Minister be removed from his post? Is perception of conflict of interest enough to move the needle?
I think perception is almost there, but with this government, no, it won't be enough. I do agree that, at some point you have to expect transparency and you have to have a certain amount of trust in the government. But the fact of the matter is that no matter what the NDP say, the UCP is the governing party. And they don't necessarily listen to what the NDP says. So I don't think that this is anything in the NDP posturing a little bit. I don't think it's enough that the government will move to act.
Janet, what kind of position do you feel this leaves the Premier in? How easily is this dismissed?
Sadly, I think it's pretty easily dismissed. There is so much going on politically, not just in Alberta, but around the world. And I think about, if we were talking about a scandal like this 10 years ago, it probably would be harder for the government to skate around it. But there is so much going on right now. And all of the controversy surrounding Sam Raish, it's complicated. And, and the public will get in an uproar about scandals that are straightforward and easy to wrap your mind around. But a scandal like this, it's just a little too confusing for the average person to really understand what's going on. And the government will benefit from that. The government will benefit from the fact that the public is focused on other things, and that if the average person can't recount what this story is about and why they should be concerned about it, then the Premier kind of has permission to focus on other more pressing issues.
All right, time for us to take a bit of a break, but when we come back, from threats of annihilation to accepting a ceasefire, the ebb, flow, and impact of the Iran war. More from our panel in a moment. Welcome back. A dramatic shift in the state of dialogue around the Iran war over the past 24 hours. The U.S. president went from threatening Iran with annihilation to proclaiming a 14-day ceasefire that Donald Trump expects to pave the way to end the nearly 6-week-old conflict. Janet, what's to be made of the extreme ebb and flow here? And should this be considered a win for the U.S. president?
Oh, it's hard to say. I mean, while we're sitting here talking, we don't know what's transpiring. So who knows if it's a win? I don't think it's a win. They're starting to call Trump taco. Trump always chickens out. And then, of course, he chickens out on a Tuesday, and we get the benefit of calling it Taco Tuesday. So, no, what it sounds like is that, Trump makes these big overtures, and then it looks like he has to do a climb down. So I would, I'm not an international relations expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I would have to say that, Trump is just continuing to lose supporters. He's continuing to lose his authority in this situation. And yes, I think it's just going to continue to be a fraught situation for quite a while.
Laura, on the point of overture, what does this suggest about the impact of Trump's extreme rhetoric ahead of the imposed deadline for a deal? He essentially said in the hours before that a whole civilization would die.
Yeah, that was one of the most stunning things that I have ever seen. But this is kind of what he does. He comes out with these outrageous statements, and then he backs off. And sometimes within the same press conference, sometimes within exactly the same 5 minutes. So, there are increasing concerns about his health, about his physical and mental health. He goes off in all kinds of directions. At this point, you just have to wonder if he even remembers what it is that he's talking about.
Janet, the Prime Minister joined with 9 European leaders today in issuing a statement welcoming the ceasefire agreement. What's on global leadership now in aiding stability, supporting efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, it's kind of funny. One of the strongest appeals that Mark Carney has is how pretty boring he is. And world leaders who seem to project this idea of just boring stability are doing well against Trump right now. And so, we had the Pope come out and give a statement about how bombing civilian infrastructure would be a war crime. We have got longtime supporters of Trump, people like Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who are now turning on Trump. So I think world leaders are trying to bring sort of a calm sanity to that, and I think that's it's hard to know how to combat a mentality like Trump's, but I think all you can do is sort of fight back with calm rationality.
Laura, we heard from Canada West Foundation president and former politician Gary Marr off the top on the lingering impact of this conflict. How do you feel we as Albertans should be weighing the longevity of the uncertainty that comes with this?
Well, there's no doubt that this is, even if this ceasefire ends up being permanent, the damage is very long term. There have been major pieces of infrastructure that are incredibly important to the oil patch that have been hit in the Middle East. As Gary Marr said, it funnels through. You see the price of diesel in Alberta has just soared, and that affects absolutely everything because we rely on diesel for shipping, and that affects our food. So even if this stopped right now, the pain will not stop right now. It is going to take a long time, perhaps years, to get us back to where we were before. And that's if the Strait of Hormuz opens permanently.
Janet, in terms of the politics involved and the lingering pain, to what degree do you see this being on federal, provincial governments now to help cushion the economic blow?
Well, it was just a few weeks ago that the provincial government put down a budget with almost a $10 billion deficit. And the way things are going with the cost of oil, that deficit may be wiped out. So on a macro level, this is going to be good for Alberta's provincial economy. But on a micro level, this is going to be very hard for individual Albertans as they deal with high gas prices and the knock-on effect to what that's going to do with the price of food and lumber and all other sorts of things. So I'm going to be paying very close attention to the next provincial update because I want to see what the net benefit to the Alberta Treasury is. And then if we see a big jump in fortunes for the Treasury, then I'm going to be looking for Danielle Smith to act and trying to give some relief to consumers. So yeah, I think it looks good for the Treasury, but it doesn't look good for the individual pocketbook.
Indeed. Okay, we'll have to leave it there for time. Great to see you both. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is like a big T-Rex.
Jasmine is a bright, thoughtful, and curious girl who loves to explore.
Look at the eye.
Especially when dinosaurs and Lego are part of the adventure.
And another one.
Good job. Born in 2017, this sweet girl loves using her imagination and expressing herself through art and drawing.
Teal is my favorite color because it reminds me of the ocean.
This creative girl also loves to sing.
Oh, I've been shaking. I love it when you go crazy.
It's this playful and joyful spirit that makes Jasmine so special.
I'll describe myself as artistic, helpful, and being kind.
This precious girl deserves an adoptive family to provide her with love, support, and encouragement.
For more information,
go online to alberta.ca/Wednesdays-child.
Proudly supported by CTV.
Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News about the Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation asking a judge to shut down the petition for an Alberta separation referendum. Stan says they don't have to leave Canada. I'm sure something can be negotiated. I'm tired of paying the feds to stop our growth and paying equalization payments when we are not treated equally in Confederation. Albert writes, so a non-elected judge can tell citizens what and how they vote? Quebec has had multiple votes on this, but Alberta is not allowed. Wolf says a judge in Alberta already ruled the petition couldn't go forward because it was unconstitutional, and the separatist premier simply overrode the judge. Anthony writes, imagine being against Alberta's referendum and thinking you're for democracy. And Mephiston thinks the separatists should actually research what it takes to legally separate. Then they'll realize how foolish this movement is. Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. Coming up tomorrow, from another floor crossing to impending by-elections, federal Liberals have much to discuss at their annual convention, and we will hear from a party strategist from right here in Alberta. That's on Thursday. Until then, have a great evening, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.